Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Aaron Hilliard. Welcome to Mushroom Wonderland. I'm out here in the woods with my dogs and we are just going on a mushroom walk. I'm gonna see what kind of mushrooms I come across right now in kind of mid-September here in Washington State. I'm a mycology educator from Kitsap County, Washington. So anyways, I'm gonna head into the woods, see what kind of mushrooms we come across. I'll describe them here on this video for you. So thanks for joining. Make sure to hit subscribe. Let's go into Mushroom Wonderland.
Welcome to Mushroom Wonderland.
Is that the right way, buddy? Oh, cool. Look at what Gunnar was pointing at. We've got these orange fungi. Actually, this log has got quite a few different kinds of fungi growing on it. Ooh, there's a nice fruiting of it down here. Let's take a look at this. Careful, don't want to slip. It rained a little bit this morning, which is nice. It's been a good start to the mushroom season. And actually, these are getting a little old. I see like a little bit of mold or a secondary fungi growing on here. But this one, the orange polypore, this one, Pycnoporellus fulgens, and that's Loki, the German short-haired pointer. It's actually a truffle dog, and he just has a blast running around in the woods out here. But anyways, Pycnoporellus fulgens, inedible, but they can be confused for or mistaken for chicken of the woods. But these ones aren't. They're just a really woody kind of conch related to the red belt conch or the Fomitopsis. That's these ones right here. Look at how big that one is. And this one's got a little bit of a belt. Kind of hard to decipher between the red belted conch and its really closely related species Fomitopsis ocratia. And then I think down here on the other end, here's a better example of the red belt on the red belted conch. Really common mushroom. You probably see these in the woods. Probably the most common fruiting body you're going to see in the forest of the Pacific Northwest. Here's a cool one. So there's our Fomitopsis montiae, red belted conch, and then right here a Ganoderma applanatum, or the artist conch. So sometimes these can be mistaken for like an agaricon, the way that's growing in this pancake stack formation. But this is the artist conch. It has a bruisable white flesh surface when it's young and alive. This one's old and decaying, so it's no longer good for artists, but a nice fresh one. Artists pick them and do beautiful works of art just from the staining on the white part of the cap. And so we've got a lot of different things going on this one log here. I like to hunt in these really heavily conifer woods with mossy floor. You know, this kind of area is where a lot of the ectomycorrhizal mushrooms grow. And so that means the mushrooms that grow in association with trees, a lot of the big edible mushrooms that people are after grow with these conifer trees. And there's also a lot of decaying wood back here. So I like that because that's where the saprobes grow. Those are the mushrooms that just live on decaying matter. So you got the two main types, mycorrhizal and saprobic. And then there's also parasitic mushrooms that can live on live trees or other fungi, which are also interesting, and hopefully we'll come across some cool parasites here today. But most of the big mushrooms that people eat are mycorrhizal, and they like to grow with the big Douglas fir and western hemlock trees here in the Northwest. So that's where you go if you're looking for wild mushrooms to forage for the dinner table. And look what we find right here on the side of the trail. Beautiful, beautiful golden chantrelles, the Pacific golden chantrelle. This is Cantharellus formosus, probably the most sought out wild edible here in the Northwest. Really easy to identify. These gills are decurrent, they run down the stipe. It's got a stringy texture, and these are growing cespitose. That means in a cluster like that, kind of like fingers or something, which is a little unusual. But this year, been a great year for them so far, and it's only September. Oh, here's an old wilted one. Not so healthy, but when you see one, you can usually find more close around. Yeah, this one's probably past its prime. I wouldn't eat that one. This is the area where I slow down and I'll look for others. Oh, here we go. And once you see one, that's kind of a flag, then you might see other ones. Beautiful chantrelles. We'll probably see more of those on this walk, but they're definitely going in the basket. Look at this really awesome mushroom growing right here on the side of the trail in the Pacific Northwest. Oh, this one looks like it might be a little past its prime, but Hypomyces lactiflorum, the lobster mushroom. So these are really coming out a lot right now. Really good edible mushroom, and when they get old like this, you can use them as a fungal pigment for dyeing fabric. The lobster mushroom smells a bit like lobster, looks a bit like lobster. This one's got a lot of worms in it, so I'm gonna kind of throw this out into the forest. You can see all these little tiny holes, and it crumbles apart super easy. So I'm just gonna toss this one into the woods, hopefully spread its spores out. It's actually, its host is a russula mushroom, which is actually pretty fun to throw at a tree. Let me throw it at this big tree right here. We're gonna spread some spores of the lobster mushroom. That was perfect. All right here, this is a look at how hidden these can be. My spidey senses are tingling right now. Most people wouldn't be able to see that there's anything going on right there, but look at that. Just the slightest hint of that orange color will reveal the lobster mushroom. Look at that, so bright. Beautiful. You see it. Look at that. Beautiful one. That's gorgeous. Oh, there's a couple of them. So a little baby. Wow. Can't even tell there were gills anymore. I mean, it's like smooth. Pretty gnarly looking on top. I am not afraid to wash these with a lot of water and a brush. But beautiful underneath. Look at this awesome mushroom. And I saw a young one up here. This little baby, look at this. Gorgeous. These ones cystoderma. Really cool mushrooms, really beautiful stipe texture. Look at that. White gills, white spored. Unknown edibility it says, but they're probably non-toxic, but they sure are cool. Pretty rare actually. Never would find enough to really eat. But surprised to see those out here in the summer. Late summer. Cystoderma. Very photogenic mushrooms. Look right here. Growing out of what seems to be the ground. But I guarantee you there's some rotten wood under here. It's a nice tuft of mushrooms that are saprobic. Oh, look at that. It just kind of seem to be growing right on the surface of the duff there, but there it is. There's wood buried right there. There's a log. And this is a pretty poisonous mushroom that grows around here, the sulfur tuft, or Hypholoma fasciculare. There's a good example of a spore print. It's like dark purplish brown colored there on top of the cap. That is spores. Those are all spores. Millions of spores right there on the tip of my finger. And so these are dropping spores out of the gills onto the ones above them. You see that? Very sporulated. So a lot of them make it out into the wind. A lot of them just fall right here on the colony. But these mushrooms are poisonous. Definitely don't want to eat them. But there is a really cool thing. Let me get in my backpack really quick. All right, so right here I have a 365 nanometer UV flashlight, and when I turn this on these mushrooms, they are super fluorescent. You see how much they glow? Really cool. So it's really bright out right now, but at night you can see these things from like 100 yards away in the woods when you just flash your flashlight out there, and they'll be glowing on the logs. Really cool. So not that cool to eat. You will get pretty sick. I don't know if anybody ever dying from them, just really bad GI upset. But really spooky and cool to look at and photograph at night with a UV light. So Hypholoma fasciculare, or the sulfur tuft, poisonous. You can just feel that fall chill in the air, and I think that the mushrooms feel it too. But there's just something about the way that the sunlight hits when autumn is starting to set in, and you can just kind of feel it, man. And it's starting to feel a little bit like arthritis to me. as they get older, but you know, I've always loved fall. I love the changing of the seasons. I really like all the seasons, but you know, we've been having some hot summers lately, so I'm welcoming this chill in the air and this autumn feel for sure. Wow, this is a very bizarre looking mushroom growing here out of the hillside. Very wet, very young and fresh. This one is the Dyer's polypore, Phaeolus schweinitzii. And it kind of reminds me of like a Danish pastry or something when it's young, and they're fuzzy and just bizarre. They bruise real easily to this dark brown color, and this is a really fluorescent mushroom. When I get out my UV flashlight and I turn this on, let's see what happens underneath. Whoa, look at the driplets of guttation under there. Very fluorescent. Very, very cool. So carrying one of these UV lights is sometimes useful, and certain mushrooms fluoresce. It just converts these chemicals, this UV light, into visible light, and just super cool in there. My friend Sydney makes a fungal henna type pigment that you put on your skin and wash it off, made out of this, and it will definitely dye your skin this yellowish green color. So really cool. Phaeolus schweinitzii with a UV light, the Dyer's polypore. I come into this clearing with these big logs, and check this out, growing on the end of this log, Phaeolus schweinitzii, the Dyer's polypore. This version is growing here on the side of a log, so it really doesn't have a stem like the version that grows out of the rotting ground. So it can look a little different when it's growing in a shelf form like this. But if you flip it over, same kind of pore under surface, and also UV reactive. The Dyer's polypore is foraged for dyeing purposes. People like to dye fabric as kind of an art project, and pretty neat. I'm actually just going to leave that one here today, but a cool, another version of Phaeolus schweinitzii. Right here alongside this trail in the conifer forest, I'm finding beautiful white chantrelles. A lot of white chantrelles out early this season. This one, Cantharellus subalbidus, is a beautiful ectomycorrhizal chantrelle. Cantharellus, I think it has about 60 different species. But right here is our native white chantrelle, and these are a great edible mushroom. They have decurrent veins. If you look right here, these gills are decurrent, and I interchange the word gill and vein, but they really are gills. They're just structures that are meant to maximize spore production area. And these guys are usually free of bugs here. I think there's some little spiders that kind of nest on them and leave these little cobwebs, but worms rarely eat these, and so they're a great edible, great forageable mushroom. And yeah, little mites have been making their webs here, but yeah, these are great little flush of white chantrelles. So carefully cut these to get the dirt off. I clean them out nice before I put them in the basket, and try not to bump them around too much, and keep them in good shape so when they get back to your dinner table they look good. But you can see they're staining gold. It's interesting. It's like they want to be golden chantrelles, but they're not. So very nice. These are just beautiful, pristine. just coming up in the last couple of days. Super duper fresh. We're getting pretty loaded up on chantrelles, and then I look back in here and there's some beauties. So sometimes you got to get down in here. You know what I mean? I got my knife and I get way down here on my hands and knees. Oh, this is a big one. I'm going to pluck this guy out by the base. Look at that. That's a white chantrelle. So way worth it getting in here in the brush. Don't be afraid to get off the trail and get in here, get on your knees and get to work, you know. September is typically the earliest part of the mushroom season, so that's where we are, but we're off to a great start. A lot of different mushrooms out here, and it's going to be an epic season this fall as far as like mycological events go. So I'm going to be at the Gorge Fungi Foray down in Trout Lake, Washington on the first weekend of October. On the third weekend of October will be the Olympic Fungi Festival in Port Angeles, Washington. On the 27th of October will be the KPMS Wild Mushroom Show at Olympic College. Me and Daniel Winkler and a couple other people are going to be giving talks there. Tons of different species of mushrooms. Come check that out if you're on the West Sound, or even if you're not. It's worth coming and checking out. There's vendors and all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the month, I'll be at the NAMA Regional Foray in Randall, Washington. So amazing area for foraging down there. But jump over to my website, mushroom-wonderland.com, and go to the description of this video for the links to all of these different events. And I hope to see you this fall. So as I'm walking along the trails, I'm noticing a lot of these kind of mushrooms that are growing sort of in the leaf litter on the side of the trail. They're just everywhere. They're all up in here, all of the decaying leaves. I'm seeing tons of these little tan colored mushrooms. Here's a bunch right here. So these mushrooms that are growing in the leaf duff back here, they're everywhere this year and this time of year, and they're very prolific. You see all of these? Let me pick one for you. They've got kind of a dry look, sort of a beige tan color, wrinkly cap, very dry looking texture. And when you flip it over, it's got this deeper yellow stipe, kind of widely spaced gills that have this nice swoop on them. I don't know if that would be considered notched gills, but they have this unique look. This one is called Colybiopsis perinata, and apparently it's invasive and it's a weed species, also known as the fuzzy foot, because it, you know, grows on this leaf duff and it has these fine mycelial rhizomorphs on the base of the foot, and they get the common name fuzzy foot, but I've heard other mushrooms called fuzzy foot as well, so I don't know, that could be really confusing. Either way, these are reportedly an invasive species. They're not supposed to be here, and they're everywhere, but I don't really know what that means for fungi. I haven't looked too much into that, like how are they harming the environment. It seems like their colony is fairly small, but then again, I mean, you see these rhizomes and how it's tearing through this leaf litter like that. So I don't know, maybe they're decaying the forest too quickly. Unknown edibility, I just don't think that they're desirable. I've never heard of anybody really wanting to eat these things. Colybiopsis perinata, really common right now. You could try, this would be a good experiment to try to pluck all the fruiting bodies, see if it has an effect on the overall number of fruits that you see. But I would be willing to bet that you will not even make a dent, because this mycelium is so widespread throughout the forest, through all of this leaf duff. The mycelium is running through all of it, creating fruiting bodies just everywhere you look. Here's the Colybiopsis, big patches of fruiting bodies. So yeah, they definitely are having an impact on the environment. Now what that means ultimately, I'm not sure how that's detrimental, but the Colybiopsis perinata, one to leave alone or hit them with the weed whacker, whatever you want to do, but that's just going to spread more spores. So really nothing we can do about that at this point, because they're out here in the wild doing their thing. But if you're wondering what they are, that's what they are. Your fuzzy foot or leaf litter fuzzy foot, the Colybiopsis parinata. This interesting looking mushroom I came across out here in the woods, Leucocaprinus. These are related to the plant pot dapperling. Sometimes you'll see a bright yellow mushroom pop up in your potted plants, but this one a little bit different and kind of unusual in this area. I just thought they were kind of cool to see that. Check out this situation. This is actually a blackening russula with a parasitic mushroom growing off of it known as Astrophora lycoperdoides, or the parasitic powder cap. And so these are a parasitic mushroom growing on another mushroom, and they're not edible. The blackening russula not edible, and then you have these parasitic powder caps, which would be no good for eating. They turn into this powder, and that's actually asexual spores. And then they have these oddly underdeveloped gills underneath there that produce regular sexual spores. So a lot going on here. We have 3 different types of spores shedding off of one fungal mass of 2 different species, and an interesting one that you can find here in the early parts of autumn or late summer, whatever you want to call it, the Astrophora lycoperdoides. And the genus name is because these star-shaped spores are so cool to look at. So the parasitic powder cap, keep an eye out for these growing on a blackening russula. Very, very neat mushrooms. Wow, look at these handsome mushrooms growing here on this wood chip pile. These ones, Leucoagaricus americanus. Look at that. Wow, those are beautiful. They look very like Pluteus-like. Big ring on them. Very handsome mushrooms. And they go through a lot of different morphological stages. Here's kind of a young one. Looks a bit different. You see that? It's more smooth, almost could look a bit like an agaricus. And it's got that sealed partial veil that's protecting the gills until they get mature enough to create spores. But what a handsome set of mushrooms, Leucoagaricus. These are said to be edible, but I've never eaten them. Yeah, nice mushrooms. Growing right on the side of the street, another one of these. There was one earlier in the summer, but this is known as the dead man's foot. Let me see. There we go, Pisolithus. How cool. It's like a huge Dyer's puffball, and it grows in association with the trees here. This guy supposedly makes some really purplish blue dye. So what a cool find. And they come back in the same spot every year, growing alongside the edge of this street where there is this large oak tree. This one I think is the gosh, I can't think of what kind of oak, but anyways, oh look, there's an exploded one. Holy crap, that's a huge one. Ooh, and it's like slimy underneath. This thing's gnarly. So this is what it looks like when it goes to spore. And this is a little bit younger. How cool. Pisolithus growing like crazy. The end of summer 2024. How you doing? Check me out. I got the tripod hanging on one side. I got the basket hanging on the other side. I got my dog leashes in hand because I have to chain them up. So got to get creative out here. It really helps to have a good pack. So anybody who's in the backpack business, holler. Right, everybody, thank you so much for joining today. All those things coming up, they're in the description of this video. Also, if you want to come be a part of my 3-part mycology course at Olympic College, it's super fun. We talk all about what is fungi and its relationship to the world. And we talk about wild mushrooms and an intro to identification. And in the 3rd session, we talk about cultivation and the history of mycology, which is like maybe my favorite part. And I'm crafting a talk to hopefully do at more festivals and stuff, all about these pioneers of mycology, where they were from, what they described, what they discovered. Really fascinating talk. So thanks for joining. Make sure to get over on mushroom-wonderland.com. Maybe go to my Patreon and get a little membership if you want to help support me and what I'm doing. That would be so much love. So until the next episode. Much love. Peace out.